I thought we had just found extra storage space in our new house, and for about 10 minutes, that explanation felt good enough to ignore everything that was wrong with it. We had only been living there for 3 days, just outside Columbus, in one of those older suburban neighborhoods where every house looks normal until you start noticing the small differences, the kind you can't quite explain but can't unsee either. The basement was unfinished, concrete floors, exposed beams, a single pull-chain light that buzzed faintly every time you turned it on, and we were down there that afternoon trying to figure out where to stack the last of our moving boxes. Megan was sorting through kitchen stuff while I dragged a metal shelf against the far wall, and that's when I noticed the outline. It wasn't obvious at first. Just a slightly cleaner rectangle in the dust, like something had been moved recently, except everything in that basement looked like it hadn't been touched in years. I remember running my hand along it, expecting rough concrete, but it felt smoother. Like painted wood under a thin layer of grime. "Hey, come look at this," I said, trying to sound casual, because I didn't want to be the guy already getting weird about a house we'd barely settled into. Megan walked over, brushing packing tape off her fingers, and leaned in beside me. "It's probably just an old storage panel," she said, almost immediately, like she needed it to be that simple. And I nodded, because that made sense. Old houses had weird additions all the time. Hidden shelves, crawlspaces, things sealed off decades ago. There was nothing inherently creepy about that. Except the edges of it weren't sealed. Not really. You could see where something had been opened. Recently. I hooked my fingers into the seam and pulled gently, expecting resistance, maybe a creak or the snap of old wood. Instead, the panel shifted almost too easily. No sound. No hesitation. It moved like it had been opened before. Not years ago. Not even months ago. "Okay," Megan said quietly behind me, and I could hear the change in her voice. Not fear exactly. Just awareness. The kind that makes you stop talking for a second and listen to the space around you. I pulled the panel farther, and a narrow gap opened up, just wide enough for a draft of air to slip through. It wasn't cold. That was the first thing I noticed. Basements are supposed to be colder than the rest of the house, especially in late October, especially in Ohio. But the air coming from inside that space felt normal. Almost warm. "That's weird," I said, before I could stop myself. Megan didn't answer right away. She stepped closer, peering into the gap, then instinctively glanced back toward the basement stairs, like she wanted to make sure we were still alone. "Just open it," she said finally, but there was hesitation in it. Not enough to stop me, though. I pulled harder, and the panel gave way fully this time, swinging inward on hinges I hadn't even noticed at first. The space behind it wasn't big. Maybe 8 feet by 10. Just enough for a small room. The light from the basement spilled in slowly, revealing shapes instead of details at first, and for a second, I remember thinking it looked organized. Too organized for something forgotten. I stepped inside before Megan could say anything else. The floor wasn't dusty like the basement. It was cleaner. Not spotless, but used. There was a thin mattress pushed against one wall, folded neatly like someone had made an effort. A plastic crate with a few bottles of water stacked upright, labels facing the same direction. A power strip plugged into the wall, one of those with a tiny green LED still glowing. I stared at it longer than I should have. That light shouldn't have been on. Not in a hidden room that no one had mentioned, not in a house we just bought after a standard inspection, not in a place that was supposed to be empty. "Ethan," Megan said, her voice lower now, tighter. "This doesn't look old." I didn't answer right away. Because I was already trying to fix it in my head, trying to force it into something that made sense. "Maybe the previous owner used it," I said. "Like a storm shelter or something. Or storage." Even as I said it, I could hear how thin it sounded. The mattress wasn't dusty. The plastic bottles didn't have that cloudy look old water gets after sitting too long. And the air in the room still felt lived in. Megan stepped in beside me, her arms crossed now, scanning everything without touching anything. Then why wasn't it in the listing, she asked. Why didn't the realtor mention it? I shrugged, because I didn't have an answer. Maybe they forgot. Or didn't think it mattered. I walked over to the crate and picked up one of the bottles, turning it in my hand. No expiration date scratched off, no discoloration. Just, normal. Could have been some squatter, I added, trying again, reaching for something more believable. Someone who broke in before we moved in and stayed down here for a while. Megan didn't respond to that either. She was looking at the walls now, at the outlet with the power strip, at the small extension cord running neatly along the baseboard. If someone was living here, she said slowly, they didn't leave in a hurry. I set the bottle back down, exactly where I'd picked it up from, suddenly aware that moving anything felt wrong. Like we were already disturbing something we didn't understand yet. Yeah, I said, forcing a small laugh. But they're gone now, right? That was the part one wanted to believe. That whatever this was, it had already happened. Past tense. Finished. Safe. Megan turned toward me then, and for a second, she didn't say anything. She just looked at me, like she was waiting for me to notice something I hadn't yet. Ethan, she said finally, her voice quieter than before. Why is it warm in here? I opened my mouth to answer, to say something about insulation or trapped heat or anything that sounded remotely reasonable, but the words didn't come out. Because I was already moving my hand back toward the crate, toward one of the bottles, toward the simplest possible test. I picked it up again, this time paying attention. Really paying attention. And that's when I felt it. The plastic was cool against my fingers. Not room temperature. Not stale. Cold. I did not say anything for a few seconds after that. I just stood there holding the bottle, feeling the cold plastic against my fingers like it was the only real thing in that room. Megan was watching me, waiting for me to say something that would make sense of it, something that would bring everything back into a normal frame. I set the bottle down slowly, exactly where it had been, and wiped my hand on my jeans without thinking. Maybe the basement is colder than we thought, I said, but even as I said it, I knew it did not line up. The basement itself had that usual stale chill to it, the kind that makes your breath feel heavier, but this room was different. It felt insulated. Sealed. Like it had been maintained. Megan shook her head slightly. No, she said. That is not it. She took a step back toward the doorway, like she did not want to be fully inside anymore. I followed her movement with my eyes, then glanced back at the walls again, trying to pick out anything I had missed. That was when I noticed the outlet more clearly. The small green light on the power strip was steady, not flickering, not dim. That meant it was drawing power right now. Not leftover energy. Not something from before we moved in. Current. Active. Did you turn the breaker on down here? Megan asked. No, I said immediately. It was already on when we got the keys. She looked back at the strip, then at me again. So this has had power the whole time. I nodded slowly, but my mind was already moving ahead of that. Power alone did not mean someone was still using the room. It could have just been left on. It could have been neglected. But the cold bottle did not fit into that explanation. Neither did the warmth in the air. I crouched down near the crate, this time paying attention to smaller details. The labels on the bottles were not peeling. There was no dust ring around them. And when I looked closer at the floor, I could see faint marks. Not footprints exactly, but slight disturbances in the thin layer of dirt, like something had been moved recently. Not dragged. Not kicked. Just, adjusted. Ethan, Megan said again, and I could hear the edge in her voice now. I do not like this. I stood up slowly, my eyes still scanning the room. It is probably nothing, I said, but I did not sound convinced, even to myself. We can just close it back up and call the realtor, ask about it. That was the logical next step. Close the panel. Step away. Let someone else explain it. But neither of us moved to actually do that. There was something about the space that held our attention, like we were trying to solve a puzzle that had already started solving us back. Megan took another small step toward the doorway, and I noticed how she kept glancing over her shoulder, toward the basement stairs. Not because she heard something, but because she was starting to expect to. "Did you hear that?" she asked suddenly. I froze. "Hear what?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Nothing. I thought I heard something upstairs." I listened then, really listened. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No footsteps. No shifting pipes. Just that faint electric hum from the power strip and the distant buzz of the basement light. "It is an old house," I said. "It is going to make noises." Megan did not respond. She just kept looking at the doorway. I turned back toward the room, forcing myself to stay focused on what I could actually see. The mattress. The crate. The outlet. The walls. That was when I noticed something else. On the far side, near the corner, there was a small object I had not paid attention to before. A phone. Not new, not anything recent, just an older model smartphone, sitting face down on the floor. "What is that?" Megan asked quietly. I walked over to it, every step feeling heavier than it should have. I did not want to touch it, but I also could not ignore it. I crouched again and flipped it over. The screen lit up instantly. Not dead. Not drained. Active. The lock screen came into view, and for a second, I just stared at it, trying to process what I was seeing. It was not blank. It was not some random wallpaper. It was a photo. Of the house. Our house. Taken from the street, angled slightly from the driveway, like someone had stood there and framed the shot carefully. Megan moved closer behind me. "Is that?" "Yeah," I said, my voice lower now. "That is this place." The time on the phone read 3:12 p.m. The same time of day it was right now. The battery icon was still more than half full. And then, before I could even decide what to do next, the screen changed. A notification appeared. No sound. Just the silent pop of a message preview. I did not recognize the number. There was no name saved. Just a string of digits. And a single line of text. "You are in the wrong room." I felt my hand tighten around the phone without realizing it. Megan leaned in, reading it over my shoulder, and I could feel her breath catch. Neither of us spoke for a second. Not because we did not know what to say, but because saying anything would have made it real too fast. I looked back at the doorway then, at the basement beyond it, at the stairs leading up to the rest of the house. Everything suddenly felt connected in a way it had not a minute ago. The room was not just a space we had found. It was part of something larger. Something that was aware of us now. Megan took a step back, then another. "We should go upstairs," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, but I did not move right away. Because my eyes were still on the phone, still on the message, still trying to find a way to explain it that did not involve the one answer I did not want to accept. And then, before I could stop myself, I glanced at the top of the screen again. The signal bars were full. The phone was not disconnected. It was not abandoned. It was receiving messages. Right now. I did not reply to the message. I just stared at it, like if I waited long enough it would disappear or correct itself into something normal, something that did not mean what I thought it meant. Megan was already backing out of the room, her hand reaching behind her for the edge of the panel, like she wanted to close it without turning her back on it. "Ethan," she said, sharper now. "We need to go. Now." I nodded, but my body felt delayed, like everything had to catch up to what my brain was trying to process. The phone was still in my hand. The message was still on the screen. You are in the wrong room. Not you should not be here. Not leave. Just, wrong room. Like there was a right one. Like someone knew exactly where we were standing. I set the phone back down where I had found it, screen facing up this time, without thinking about why that felt important. Maybe some part of me wanted whoever sent that message to know we had seen it. Or maybe I just did not want to keep holding it. Megan pulled the panel slightly toward her, not fully closing it, just enough to create a barrier between us and the space. Did you see the number? She asked. No, I said. I did not recognize it. Call the police, she said immediately. Or at least the realtor. Someone. I looked toward the stairs again, then back at her. Let us just go upstairs first, I said. We will figure it out from there. That felt safer. Being on the main floor. Having doors and windows and space. Not being underground in a room that suddenly felt like it had been watching us long before we found it. We stepped out together, moving slower than we should have, both of us listening now in a way we had not been before. Every small sound felt amplified. The faint creak of wood somewhere above us. The hum of the house settling. The quiet that did not feel empty anymore. I reached back and pushed the panel closed the rest of the way. It clicked softly into place, sealing the room off again like it had never been there. But now I knew exactly where it was. And that made the entire basement feel different. We climbed the stairs without speaking. Each step felt louder than it should have, like the house was echoing us back to ourselves. When we reached the top, Megan turned immediately toward the front door, checking the lock, then the deadbolt, then the handle again, even though it had been locked all day. I walked into the living room, scanning the windows, the hallway, the kitchen beyond it. Everything looked the same. The same boxes. The same half-unpacked furniture. The same quiet afternoon light coming through the blinds. But it did not feel the same. It felt like we had stepped into a place that already knew us. Call someone, Megan said again, more urgently this time. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, my fingers hovering over the screen as I tried to decide who made the most sense. Police felt like too much too fast. Realtor felt too distant. I was still trying to keep this inside the realm of something explainable. Something that would not immediately turn into something bigger than we could control. I will call the realtor, I said finally. Just to ask about the room. Megan nodded, but she did not look convinced. She stayed near the front door, her eyes flicking toward the hallway every few seconds. I stepped into the kitchen, dialing the number we had saved earlier that week. It rang longer than I expected. Each second stretching out just enough to make me more aware of the silence around me. On the fourth ring, she picked up. Hey, Ethan, she said, her voice upbeat, normal. How is the new place? I hesitated for just a second, trying to match her tone. It is good, I said. We just had a quick question about the house. Sure, she said. What is up? I glanced back toward the basement door, then lowered my voice slightly without meaning to. Is there any kind of hidden room in the basement? Like behind a panel or anything? There was a pause on the line. Not long. But noticeable. A hidden room, she repeated. No, that was not on any of the disclosures. Are you sure? I asked. Because we just found one. Another pause. This one longer. I could hear papers shifting faintly on her end, like she was checking something. That is, not something that was mentioned to me, she said finally. The inspection report did not flag anything like that either. I felt my grip tighten slightly on the phone. Okay, I said slowly. Because it looks like it has been used. Recently. Megan was watching me now from the doorway, trying to read my face. Used how? The realtor asked. There is a mattress, I said. Some supplies. Power running into it. Silence again. Then, Ethan, I do not have any record of that. The previous owner did not disclose anything about an additional room or anyone staying there. Right, I said. Okay. I ended the call a few seconds later, not because I had gotten any answers, but because I knew I was not going to get them from her. Megan stepped closer as soon as I lowered the phone. What did she say? Nothing, I said. She did not know about it. Megan exhaled slowly, running a hand through her hair. Then who does? I did not answer that. Because the only answer that made sense was the one I did not want to say out loud. We stood there for a moment, both of us. Listening again, both of us waiting for something we could not define. And then it happened. A sound. Soft. Subtle. But unmistakable once you noticed it. A single, slow creak. From somewhere down the hallway. Not the basement. Not behind us. Inside the house. Megan's head turned toward it immediately. Mine followed a second later. We did not move. We just stood there, staring at the darkened hallway that led toward the bedrooms, both of us trying to decide if we had actually heard it or if our minds were filling in the silence with something that was not there. Then it came again. Slightly louder this time. Like a floorboard shifting under weight that was not ours. Neither of us said anything after that second creak. It was not loud, not dramatic, not the kind of sound you hear in movies where something crashes or slams. It was small. Subtle. The kind of sound a house makes all the time. Except this one had a rhythm to it. A pause. Then a shift. Like weight adjusting on wood. Megan's hand found my arm without looking, gripping it tighter than she probably realized. That is not the house, she whispered. I nodded, even though I did not fully trust myself to speak yet. Because if I said it out loud, if I confirmed what we were both thinking, it would stop being a possibility and become something real. The hallway stretched out in front of us, dimmer than the rest of the house because we had not replaced the overhead bulb yet. Just a soft spill of light from the living room behind us, fading into shadow halfway down. The bedrooms were at the end. 3 doors. All closed when we had come upstairs earlier. I knew that. I remembered it clearly. I had checked them when we first walked through the house that morning, just out of habit. Every door shut. Every room empty. We should check, I said, even though my voice came out quieter than I intended. Megan did not let go of my arm. Together, she said. We are not splitting up. Yeah, I said. Together. We moved slowly, step by step, into the hallway. The floor felt different now. Every board under our feet seemed louder, like it was announcing exactly where we were. I tried to step carefully, placing my weight evenly, but it did not matter. The house carried the sound anyway. Halfway down the hall, I noticed something that made me stop without meaning to. One of the doors was not fully closed anymore. It was open just a few inches. Enough to create a thin line of darkness between the frame and the door. I stared at it, trying to remember if it had been like that before. It had not. I was sure of that. Megan saw it too. Her grip tightened again. Was that open? She asked. I shook my head slowly. No, the word felt heavy. Final. We stood there for a second, neither of us wanting to be the one to move first. Then I stepped forward. 1 step. Then another. The gap in the door did not change, but the darkness inside it seemed to deepen as we got closer, like it was absorbing the light instead of reflecting it. I reached the handle and paused, my hand hovering just short of touching it. I listened again. Nothing. No movement. No shifting. Just that same quiet, but now it felt like the quiet was watching us back. Just open it, Megan said, her voice barely steady. I nodded, then pushed the door gently. It swung inward without resistance. The room inside was empty. Completely empty. Just a bare bedroom with a single window, blinds half closed, light filtering through in thin stripes across the floor. No movement. No sound. Nothing out of place. I exhaled slowly, not realizing I had been holding my breath. Okay, I said. It is empty. Megan stepped past me, scanning the corners, the closet, the ceiling, like she did not trust the first look. Then what made the noise? She asked. I did not answer. Because I did not know. And because there were still 2 more doors at the end of the hallway. We moved to the next one. This time, I checked the gap first. Closed. Completely. I reached for the handle and turned it slowly. The door opened into what was supposed to be the guest room. It looked exactly how we had left it. Boxes stacked along the wall. A folded blanket on the floor. No signs of anything disturbed. Megan let out a small breath, but it did not sound like relief. Not yet. There was still 1 door left. The master bedroom. The one we had slept in the night before. I felt something shift in my chest as we approached it. Not fear exactly. Something closer to anticipation. Like I already knew this was the one that mattered. The door was closed. Completely still. I reached for the handle again, this time noticing how my hand hesitated just a fraction longer than before. Megan stood close behind me, not saying anything now. Just waiting. I turned the handle and pushed the door open. The room looked normal at first glance. The bed. The dresser. The suitcase still half unpacked in the corner. But something was off. It took me a second to see it. The window. We had closed it before going downstairs. I remembered that clearly because Megan had mentioned the draft earlier that morning. But now it was open. Not wide. Just a few inches. Enough to let a thin stream of air move the curtain slightly, back and forth, in a slow, steady rhythm. Megan stepped past me again, moving toward the window, her eyes locked on it. Did you open this? She asked. No, I said immediately. She reached out and touched the frame, like she needed to confirm it physically. It was closed, she said. I know it was. I nodded, but my attention had shifted. Because the curtain was not the only thing moving. The closet door, just to the right of the window, was not fully shut. It was open just enough to create another narrow gap. And from where I stood, I could not see inside it. I felt that same awareness from earlier, but stronger now. Sharper. Like whatever had been in the hidden room was no longer contained there. Like it had moved. Megan followed my gaze, her body going still the moment she noticed the closet. Ethan, she said quietly. I did not respond. I just took a step toward it. Then another. Each step slower than the last. The gap in the door did not change. The darkness inside it stayed the same. Flat. Silent. Waiting. I reached out and placed my hand on the edge of the door, feeling the cool wood under my fingers. For a second, I almost pulled it open without thinking. But something stopped me. Not a sound. Not a movement. Just a feeling. Like if I opened that door, whatever was inside would not be a surprise. It would be confirmation. And I was not sure I was ready for that yet. Behind me, Megan's voice came again, barely above a whisper. Do not. I froze. My hand still on the door. The curtain still moving behind it. The house completely silent again. And then, from somewhere deeper inside the house, not the hallway, not the basement, but from within the walls themselves, I heard it. A faint vibration. Like a phone on silent mode, buzzing against a hard surface. And it was not coming from the room we were standing in. The sound did not stop after that first vibration. It came again, slightly longer this time, a low, steady buzz that seemed to travel through the walls instead of coming from any one direction. My hand was still resting on the closet door, but I was no longer focused on it. I was listening, trying to trace the source, trying to decide if it was closer to us or deeper inside the house. Megan stepped back slowly, her eyes moving from the closet to the walls, then toward the hallway. "That is not your phone," she said. I shook my head. Mine was still in my pocket. I could feel it, still and silent. "And it is not mine," she added. The vibration came again. This time it lasted longer, enough for me to notice something I had missed before. It was not random. It had a pattern. A pause, then a buzz. Then another pause. Like notifications stacking up on a device that had been left unattended. Except it was not unattended. It was somewhere inside the house. "It is coming from the walls," Megan said, her voice tighter now. "Or the floor. I cannot tell." I stepped away from the closet, the door still slightly open behind me, and moved toward the hallway again. The sound shifted as I moved, not louder, not softer, just repositioned. Like it was not fixed in one place. Like it was following a path I could not see. "Wait," Megan said suddenly. "Listen." We both stopped moving. The vibration came again, but this time it was clearer. Not because it was louder, but because it was closer to something solid. It echoed slightly, like it was inside a confined space. And then it stopped. Completely. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything we had heard so far. I glanced back at the closet door, still half open, then toward the window, still cracked just enough to let the curtain sway. Nothing moved. Nothing changed. Except the feeling. The house no longer felt like a place we had just moved into. It felt like something we had entered without permission. "We need to leave," Megan said. Not a question this time. Not a suggestion. A decision. I nodded immediately. "Yeah," I said. "We are leaving." But neither of us moved right away. Because leaving meant turning our backs on everything behind us. The hallway. The rooms. The closet. The basement. And whatever was making that sound. I forced myself to step forward, away from the bedroom, away from the closet, and into the hallway. Megan stayed close behind me, her hand brushing against my arm like she was making sure I was still there. We moved toward the living room again, each step measured, each sound under our feet sharper than before. I kept expecting to hear something else. A shift. A breath. Another creak. But the house stayed quiet. Too quiet. When we reached the living room, Megan went straight for the front door again, unlocking the deadbolt with a quick, practiced motion. I was a few steps behind her when the vibration started again. Louder this time. Closer. It was not coming from the hallway anymore. It was coming from below us. From the floor. We both froze at the same time. Megan's hand stopped on the door handle. I looked down instinctively, like I could see through the hardwood into whatever was beneath it. The vibration continued, steady now, almost urgent. And then it clicked in my head. The basement. The hidden room. The phone. "It is that phone," I said. Megan turned toward me slowly. "What?" "The one in the room," I said. "It is getting messages." The realization settled in between us, heavy and immediate. That phone was still active. Still receiving something. Still connected to whoever had sent that message. And we had left it down there. Then why does it sound like it is right under us? Megan asked. I did not have an answer for that. Because she was right. It did not sound like it was deep in the basement. It sounded closer. Too close. The vibration stopped abruptly again, cutting off mid-pulse. The silence that followed felt wrong. Incomplete. Like something had been interrupted. Megan slowly opened the front door, just a few inches, letting in a slice of late afternoon light from outside. Fresh air. Normal air. "We are going," she said again, more firmly this time. I nodded and stepped toward her. But as I moved, something caught my eye. The small table near the entryway. We had dropped a few things there earlier that day. Keys. Mail. My phone charger. And something else. Something that had not been there before. I stopped. Megan noticed immediately. "What?" she asked. I did not answer. I just pointed. On the table, sitting neatly beside my keys, was a phone. Not mine. Not Megan's. The same older model I had seen in the hidden room. Screen facing up. Still. Silent. Megan's breath caught. "Ethan," she said, but did not finish the sentence. I stepped closer slowly, my eyes locked on it. The screen was dark at first. Then, as if responding to our presence, it lit up. No sound. Just the glow of the display coming to life. The lock screen appeared. The same photo of the house. The same angle. But this time, something was different. The image was slightly shifted. Not the same photo. A new one. Taken closer. From the porch. From right where we were standing. I felt something tighten in my chest as I looked at it. Megan stepped back, her hand leaving the door handle. "That was not there," she said. "We did not bring that up." I shook my head slowly, not trusting my voice. The phone had not been on that table a minute ago. I was sure of it. And yet there it was now. Like it had always been there. Like we had just failed to notice it. The screen flickered slightly, then a new notification appeared. No sound. Just text. I did not recognize the number. But I did not need to. I already knew who it was from. The message preview was short. Just a single line. "You left it open." I felt my stomach drop slightly as I read it. My mind immediately jumped back to the basement. To the panel. To the hidden room. Megan followed my gaze, her face going pale as she understood. "The door," she said. "We did not lock it." I shook my head again, slower. "This time." "No," I said quietly. "Not the front door." And as I said it, I realized something that made everything else feel smaller by comparison. We had closed the panel. But we had not locked anything behind it. Because there had been no lock. The message stayed on the screen, glowing softly in the dim light of the room. And for the first time since we found that space, I understood something clearly. We had not discovered a hidden room in our house. We had walked into someone else's. I did not move right away after reading that message. My eyes stayed locked on the screen, on those 4 words that somehow felt heavier than anything else we had seen so far. You left it open. Not a guess. Not a warning. A statement. Megan took another step back, her shoulder brushing against the wall like she needed something solid behind her. "Ethan," she said quietly, "we are leaving. Right now." This time, I did not hesitate. I reached for the front door and pulled it open fully, letting the outside air flood in. It felt colder than before, sharper, like stepping into something real after being somewhere that was not. Megan moved past me first, stepping onto the porch without looking back. I followed immediately, pulling the door shut behind us and locking it without thinking, my hands moving faster now, more certain. The deadbolt clicked into place, then the handle, then I checked it again. Twice. We stood there for a second on the porch, neither of us speaking, both of us listening. The house was quiet again. From the outside, it looked exactly like it had that morning. Still. Normal. Nothing about it suggested anything was wrong. Megan exhaled slowly, her breath visible in the cooler air. "We are calling the police," she said. I nodded. "Yeah." I pulled my phone out and started dialing, but before I could press call, something stopped me. Not a sound. Not a movement. Just a thought that landed too clearly to ignore. If someone had been inside the house, if they were still inside, calling the police was the right move. But the message, it did not read like someone surprised by us. It read like someone tracking us. Like someone who knew exactly what we had done, in real time. I lowered the phone slightly, staring back at the front door. Megan noticed immediately. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Just, wait a second," I said. My eyes moved up toward the second-floor window, then back down to the porch, then to the driveway. Everything looked empty. No cars besides ours. No movement. No one watching. And yet the photo on that phone, it had been taken from here. From this exact spot. Megan followed my gaze, then shook her head. "No," she said. "Do not do that. Do not go back in." I did not answer right away. Because part of me already knew she was right. But another part of me needed to understand something. "If someone is in there," I said slowly, "they already know we are out here." Megan's expression tightened. "That is exactly why we do not go back inside." I nodded, but my attention shifted again. Because something else did not add up. The phone. It had moved. From the hidden room to the entry table. No sound. No sign. Just, there. Which meant one of two things. Either someone had physically brought it upstairs while we were distracted, or it had never been left in that room in the first place. Neither option felt better than the other. The silence stretched between us again, heavy and waiting. Then Megan spoke, quieter this time. "What if they are not in there right now?" I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "What if they are not inside?" she said. "What if they are just, watching?" I followed her gaze instinctively, scanning the street, the neighboring houses, the parked cars further down the block. Everything looked normal. Too normal. A dog barking somewhere in the distance. A car passing at the end of the street. No one standing still. No one looking at us. But the feeling did not go away. It stayed, low and steady, like something just out of sight. My phone buzzed in my hands suddenly, sharp and immediate, breaking the silence in a way that made both of us flinch. I looked down. Unknown number. My chest tightened slightly as I stared at it. Megan saw it too. "Do not answer," she said immediately. I hesitated. Just for a second. Then I answered. I did not say anything at first. I just held the phone to my ear and listened. There was no voice on the other end. No breathing. No background noise. Just silence. Then, after a few seconds, a faint sound. Not from the call. From somewhere else. Inside the house. I lowered the phone slightly, my eyes snapping back to the front door. Megan followed my movement. "What is it?" she asked. I did not answer. Because I was listening again. The sound came again. Muffled. Distant. But clear enough this time to recognize. Knocking. Not loud. Not urgent. Just a slow, deliberate knock. From inside. Megan's hand found my arm again, gripping tighter than before. "That is inside," she whispered. I nodded slowly. "Yeah." The knocking came again. 3 soft taps. A pause. Then 3 more. Not random. Not accidental. Intentional. Megan shook her head, stepping back toward the edge of the porch. No, she said. No, we are not doing this. We are leaving. I knew she was right. Every part of me knew we should get in a car, drive away, call the police from somewhere else, never come back until someone else had checked every inch of that house. But my eyes stayed on the door. On the lock I had just secured. On the barrier that suddenly did not feel like one anymore. Because whatever was inside was not trying to get out. It was knocking from the inside like it expected us to come back. My phone was still against my ear. The call was still connected. And then, finally, a voice. Not loud. Not clear. Just enough to be understood. You closed the wrong one. The line went dead immediately after. I pulled the phone away slowly, staring at the screen, at the call that had already ended. Megan was watching me, her face pale, waiting for me to explain what I had just heard. I did not answer her. Because my mind had already gone back to the basement. To the panel. To the room behind it. And to something I had not considered before. We had closed the panel. But we had not checked what was on the other side of it anymore. Not after the message. Not after the phone moved. Not after the sound started upstairs. The knocking from inside the house continued. Slow. Even. Patient. And for the first time since we stepped outside, I realized something that made the cold air feel thinner. Whatever was inside that house was not trying to hide. Anymore. It was waiting. The knocking did not stop. It stayed steady, controlled, like whoever was making it knew exactly how loud it needed to be to keep our attention without drawing anyone else's. 3 taps. A pause. 3 more. The rhythm settled into something almost familiar, like it had been done enough times to become routine. Megan was already backing down the porch steps, shaking her head, her eyes never leaving the front door. We are leaving, she said again, more urgently now. We are not staying here for this. I nodded, but I did not move right away. Because the voice from the phone was still sitting in my head. You closed the wrong one. Not confusing. Not vague. Specific. Deliberate. And it did not match what we had just done. We had locked the front door. We had left the house. That should have been the end of it. But it was not. Because something inside was still knocking. Megan reached the driveway and turned back toward me. Ethan, she said, sharper now. Come on. I forced myself to move, stepping off the porch and toward her, but my eyes stayed on the house. On the windows. On the front door. On every place where something could have been watching us from the other side. The knocking continued, muffled now by distance, but still there. Still consistent. We reached the car, and Megan immediately pulled her keys out, unlocking it with a quick press. The sound of the car unlocking felt too loud, too sudden, like it did not belong in the quiet of that street. She opened the passenger door and looked at me. Get in, she said. I hesitated. Not because I did not want to leave, but because something still did not make sense. The message. The call. The phone moving from the basement to the table. None of it fit into a simple explanation. And the more I tried to force it into one, the more it slipped away. Megan's voice cut through that thought. Ethan. I looked at her, then at the car, then back at the house one more time. And that was when I saw it. Not movement. Not a person. Just a small detail that had not been there before. The curtain in the front window. It was slightly pulled back. Not fully. Just enough to create a narrow gap. And in that gap, something darker than the room behind it. Not a shape I could define. Not a face. Just absence. Like the light did not reach that spot anymore. I felt my chest tighten slightly as I stared at it. Megan followed my gaze, then immediately shook her head again. "No," she said. "Do not do that. Do not look for it." I forced myself to look away and got into the car, pulling the door shut harder than I needed to. Megan was already in the driver's seat, her hands gripping the wheel before the engine was even on. She started the car quickly, the engine cutting through the silence like something breaking. For a second, neither of us moved. We just sat there, both of us breathing a little too fast, both of us still listening. The knocking had stopped. I noticed it immediately. The absence of it was louder than the sound had been. Megan noticed too. "It stopped," she said. I nodded slowly. "Yeah. That felt worse. Because the knocking had been constant. Predictable. Something we could track. Now there was nothing. Just silence again." Megan put the car in reverse, her eyes flicking between the mirrors and the house. As she backed out of the driveway, I kept watching the front window. The curtain did not move again. The gap stayed exactly the same. When we reached the street, she shifted into drive and pulled away, faster than necessary but not fast enough to feel like escape. The house stayed in view for a few seconds, then disappeared behind us as we turned the corner. Neither of us spoke for a while after that. The quiet inside the car felt different than the quiet in the house. Safer, but not completely. Like whatever had been there had not stayed contained to that space in my head. Megan finally broke the silence. "We are not going back there," she said. Not a question. Not something to discuss. A decision. I nodded. Yeah. But even as I said it, I knew it was not that simple. Because everything we owned was still in that house. Our clothes. Our documents. Our things. And more than that, something else was still there too. Something that had been there before we moved in. Something that had not been disclosed. Something that knew exactly when we arrived. My phone buzzed again in my hand, softer this time, but enough to pull my attention back immediately. I looked down at the screen. Another message. Same unknown number. Megan glanced over. "Do not read it," she said quickly. I ignored that. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to know. I opened the message. There was no greeting. No context. Just another single line. "You left something behind." I felt my grip tighten on the phone as I read it. Megan saw my expression change. "What does it say?" she asked. I hesitated, then showed her the screen. She read it quickly, then looked back up at the road, her jaw tightening. "No," she said. "We are not going back for anything." I nodded again, but my mind was already moving through possibilities. What had we left? Keys? No. We had them. Phones? No. Wallets? No. Everything important was with us. Except. I thought back to the entry table. The phone. The one that had appeared there. The one we had not taken. I looked down at my hand instinctively, half expecting to see it there, but it was not. Of course it was not. We had left it behind. Megan's voice came again, quieter this time. "Ethan, what if that is what it wants?" I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "What if it wants us to come back?" she said. "What if everything it is doing is just to get us back inside?" I did not answer right away. Because that made sense. Too much sense. The message about leaving something behind. The knocking stopping the moment we got into the car. The way everything seemed to react to where we were and what we did. It did not feel random. It felt guided. Controlled. I looked back at the road ahead, then at the rearview mirror. The street behind us was empty now. No cars following. No one outside. Just the normal quiet of a suburban neighborhood in the late afternoon. But the feeling did not go away. It stayed with me, low and steady. Like something had shifted, not in the house, but in us. Megan tightened her grip on the wheel slightly. "We are going to call the police," she said again, more certain now. "And we are not stepping foot back in that house until someone else has checked everything." I nodded slowly. "Yeah." But as I said it, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was not a message. It was a photo. No text. Just an image. I opened it without thinking. And my chest tightened again the moment it loaded. It was the front door. Our front door. From the inside. The angle was low, like the phone had been placed somewhere on the floor, pointed upward. The deadbolt was visible. The handle. The faint outline of the doorframe. And right at the bottom of the image, barely visible in the dim light, was the edge of the panel. Not in the basement. Not hidden. Here. On the first floor. I stared at it, trying to process what I was seeing. Megan glanced over again, then quickly back at the road. "What is it?" she asked. I swallowed once before answering. "The room," I said quietly. "It is not just in the basement." For a few seconds after I said that, neither of us spoke. The car kept moving, steady down the street, but everything inside it felt like it had stopped. Megan's hands were tight on the wheel, her eyes fixed forward, but I could see the way her breathing had changed. Slower, but more controlled. Like she was trying to keep something from slipping. "What do you mean it is not just in the basement?" she said finally, her voice lower now. I looked down at the photo again, zooming in slightly, my fingers moving without thinking. The image was grainy, like it had been taken in low light, but the details were there if you looked long enough. The bottom edge of the door. The thin strip of light under it. And just beside it, barely visible, a seam. A vertical line in the wall that should not have been there. Not in the entryway. Not on the main floor. "That is the front hallway," I said. "Right by the door." Megan shook her head immediately. "No. There is nothing there. We would have seen it." "We did not see the one in the basement either," I said. That landed harder than I expected. Because it was true. The panel had been there the whole time. We just had not noticed it until something made us look closer. Megan did not respond right away. She just kept driving, her eyes flicking once toward the rearview mirror before settling back on the road. "So what?" she said after a moment. "There are more rooms? Hidden all over the house?" I did not answer immediately. Because the idea sounded ridiculous when you said it out loud. But the evidence was sitting in my hand. A photo taken from inside our house. Showing something we had not seen. Something we had not checked. Something that had been there the entire time. My phone buzzed again. Another message. I did not hesitate this time. I opened it immediately. "You are starting to understand." I stared at the words, feeling something shift again, deeper this time. This was not just someone inside the house. This was someone who knew exactly how we were reacting. Who knew what we were thinking. Who was watching the same progression happen in real time. Megan glanced over again, her voice sharper now. "What does it say?" I showed her the screen. She read it quickly, then looked back at the road, her jaw tightening again. "No," she said. "No, that is not happening. That is not real." I did not argue. Because part of me wanted to believe that too. That this was some kind of elaborate prank. Some leftover system from the previous owner. Something explainable. But the timing did not match. The details did not match. And the feeling definitely did not match anything normal. "We are calling the police," Megan said again, more firmly this time. "Right now." I nodded and dialed before I could second guess it. The line rang once, then connected. A dispatcher answered, her voice calm, steady, professional. I explained everything as clearly as I could. The hidden room. The phone. The messages. The knocking. The photo. I left out the parts that sounded too strange, not because they were not important, but because I knew how they would sound to someone who was not there. There was a pause on the other end when I finished. "Sir," she said carefully, "are you currently inside the residence?" "No," I said. "We left. We are down the street." "That was the right decision," she said. "We can send an officer to check the property. Do not return until they arrive." I nodded, even though she could not see me. "Okay." Megan let out a breath she had been holding. "Thank you," she said quietly, even though she was not the one on the call. I ended it a moment later, setting the phone down in my lap. For the first time since we had stepped outside, there was a plan. Someone else would go in. Someone else would check. Someone else would confirm what was actually there. Megan slowed the car slightly as we reached the end of the block, then pulled over near the curb. "We will wait here," she said. "We are not going far." I nodded, but my attention drifted again. Back to the photo. Back to the seam in the wall. Back to the idea that the room was not just in one place. That it might not even be a single room at all. That it could be something that connected different parts of the house. Something built to be unseen. Something designed to exist between the spaces we thought we understood. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was not a message. It was another photo. I opened it slowly, almost expecting it. This one took a second longer to load. And when it did, I felt my chest tighten again. It was the hallway. Our hallway. The same one we had just walked through minutes earlier. The same 3 doors. The same dim light. But the angle was different. Lower. Closer to the wall. Like it had been taken from somewhere just out of sight. Just inside something. And in the center of the frame, the master bedroom door. Closed. Completely still. Megan leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "That is, from inside the house." I nodded slowly. "Yeah." She swallowed once, then asked the question neither of us wanted to say out loud. "When was that taken?" I looked at the timestamp in the corner of the image. It was from less than a minute ago. Megan pulled back slightly, her hands tightening on the wheel again. "We are not there," she said. "We are not in that house." "I know," I said. But that was the problem. Because the image did not look like an empty house. It looked like something was waiting in it. Watching the door. Waiting for it to open. My phone buzzed again. Another message. I did not need to open it to know it was from the same number. But I did anyway. "You left the other one open too." I felt something drop in my stomach as I read it. Megan saw my face change. "What now?" she asked. I turned the screen toward her. She read it, then shook her head immediately. "No," she said. "No, that is not possible." But it was. Because we had only closed what we had seen. The panel in the basement. The doors in the hallway. The front door. We had assumed those were the only access points. The only ways in and out. But if the room was not just in one place, if it connected more than one space, then closing one entrance would not matter. Because there were others. And we had not found them yet. The silence in the car stretched again, heavier than before. Megan looked straight ahead, her voice barely steady now. "How many are there?" I did not answer. Because I did not think that was the right question anymore. The better question was something else. Not how many. But where. And as that thought settled in, something else followed it. Something worse. We had been in that house for 3 days. We had slept there. Walked through every room. Closed every door. And we had not noticed any of it. Not until today. Which meant one thing. We had not been the only ones moving through that house the entire time. We did not speak after that realization settled in. Not right away. The car sat idling at the curb, engine humming softly, but everything inside it felt suspended. Megan's hands were still on the wheel, but she was not gripping it as tightly anymore. She was staring straight ahead, like she was trying to hold on to something normal in front of her. I kept looking at the phone in my hand, at the messages, at the photos, at the timestamps that proved all of this was happening in real time. Not earlier. Not delayed. Now. A few minutes passed before we saw the police car turn onto our street. The flashing lights were not on, just the steady movement of the vehicle as it slowed near the house. Megan exhaled quietly, her shoulders dropping just slightly. "They are here," she said. I nodded, but the feeling in my chest did not ease. Because this was the moment where things were supposed to become clear. Where someone else would walk into that house and confirm what was actually there. Or what was not. We watched as the officer stepped out of the car and approached the front door. He paused for a second, looking around the property, then knocked. A normal knock. Firm. Direct. Nothing like the slow pattern we had heard from inside earlier. There was no response. He knocked again, then reached for the handle. I felt my body tense as he opened the door and stepped inside without hesitation. Megan leaned forward slightly in her seat, watching every movement. "He is just walking in," she said. "Like it is nothing." I nodded slowly. Because to him, it is nothing. Not yet. We sat there, watching the house, waiting. A minute passed. Then 2. Then 3. No movement at the windows. No signs of anything unusual. Just the same quiet exterior we had seen before. My phone buzzed again. I looked down immediately. Another message. I opened it without thinking. He will not find it. I felt something shift again as I read that. Not fear. Not exactly. Something closer to certainty. Megan saw my expression change. "What now?" she asked. I showed her the screen. She read it, then shook her head again, but this time slower. Less confident. "What does that mean?" she asked. I did not answer. Because I already understood it. Or at least part of it. The officer was checking the house. The visible parts. The rooms. The doors. The spaces that made sense. But the room, or whatever it really was, did not exist in those spaces the way we thought it did. It was hidden. Not just physically, but structurally. Integrated into the house in a way that you would not find unless you knew exactly where to look. And he did not. The front door opened again. We both looked up immediately. The officer stepped out, looking calm, unbothered. He walked down the steps and back toward his car, not in a hurry, not reacting to anything unusual. Megan's voice came out before I could say anything. "That is it," she said. "He is just leaving." I watched as the officer got back into his car, then pulled away from the curb without turning on his lights. No urgency. No follow-up. Just, done. My phone buzzed again. I did not even wait this time. I opened the message as soon as it appeared. "I told you." I stared at it, feeling that same certainty settle in deeper now. Megan shook her head, her voice tighter again. "No. No, that does not make sense. He was inside. He would have seen something. He did not know where to look," I said quietly. Megan turned toward me. "Then we tell him," she said. "We call back." We explain everything. I nodded, but I did not reach for the phone. Because something else was already forming in my head. Something that had been building since the first message. Since the first photo. Since the first time I realized this was not random. This was controlled. It is not just about the room, I said. Megan frowned slightly. What do you mean? I looked down at the last photo again. The hallway. The door. The angle from somewhere hidden. It is about access, I said. Whoever is doing this, they are not just inside the house. They move through it. Megan's expression shifted slightly as she processed that. Through the walls, she said slowly. Or between them. I nodded. Yeah. The silence returned again, but this time it felt different. Not empty. Not waiting. More like something had been revealed, and now we were both trying to understand what it meant. My phone buzzed again. Another photo. I opened it slowly, already expecting it. This one took a moment longer to register. It was darker than the others. Narrower. The frame tighter. It took me a second to realize what I was looking at. The space between two walls. Not a full room. Not a hallway. Just a thin gap. Wooden beams. Insulation. Wiring. And just enough space for someone to move through if they knew how. Megan leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. Is that, inside the walls? I nodded slowly. Yeah. The image was angled downward slightly, like whoever took it was standing in that space, looking out through a narrow opening. And at the edge of the frame, barely visible, was a sliver of light. A crack. An opening into another part of the house. I felt my chest tighten again as I looked at it. Because it confirmed everything. The room was not a single place. It was a system. A network of hidden spaces built into the structure of the house. Connected. Overlapping. Allowing movement without being seen. Megan leaned back. In her seat, her voice quieter now. So they have been, what? Watching us? Moving around while we were there? I did not answer immediately. Because the answer was already obvious. And saying it out loud would not make it any less real. My phone buzzed again. Another message. I opened it. You were never alone. I felt that line settle in heavier than anything else. Not because it was new information. But because it confirmed what we had already started to understand. Every moment in that house. Every step. Every closed door. Every quiet night. It had all been shared. Megan shook her head slowly, her eyes fixed on the dashboard now. We are not going back, she said. Not out of fear this time. Out of certainty. I nodded. No, and for the first time since we left, I believed that was the right decision. Not because the house was dangerous in a way we could confront. But because it was something else entirely. Something designed to exist just outside of what we notice. Just outside of what we question. Something that does not need to break in. Because it was already there. And as I looked down at the phone one last time, at the messages, at the photos, at the quiet proof of everything we had missed, one final thought settled in. We had not found a hidden space in that house. We had been living inside it.